Hello, I am Wead Kimbrough, co-founder of Good Genes Genealogy Services and your Hillside International Truth Center genealogist. In the presentation you are about to view, you will hear from participants of our monthly Hillside Sankofa Ancestry and Genealogy Workshops. This short presentation highlights the ongoing journey to reclaim the ancestral heritage of one man and his family from Georgia. You will also hear additional stories, told from the perspective of free African Americans and their African Diasporan ancestry. Together, these stories reflect how genealogical research moves beyond surface-level searches into deeper historical understanding. Hidden records emerge slowly, often in fragments, yet with growing clarity, care, and purpose. What begins as a search for names, places, and dates evolves into something far more meaningful, a reconnection to ancestral lives shaped by resilience, survival, and enduring legacy. Through patience and persistence, these participants are reclaiming narratives long obscured by time, migration, and history itself. This work is not simply about tracing lineage, it is about restoring memory, honoring those who came before, and affirming the power of knowing where we come from. And now, without further ado, I present Roots Revealed, Stories of Genealogical Discovery. From the very beginning of the Hillside Sankofa Ancestry Workshops, Clyde White arrived carrying his story with him. He already knew pieces of who he was. He knew that across the ocean, in Liberia, there is a place named for Maryland. He knew his Maryland ancestors were boat makers, craftsmen, people who understood water movement and survival.
When people meet me, they will see a smile or someone who loves to talk, create a bond. And that's what I got from my family, mom and dad's side. We were close. It's a small area where they were born. Their hometown is called Dames Quarter, Maryland. Now, as black folks, we didn't say Dames. It was Dames Quarter, Maryland. That was home for us. It was right off the water, marshland, and my father's father, mother, mom's dad and mother, they're all from Dames Quarter, Maryland. I went to Salisbury High. Beautiful school. It was in my neighborhood where I lived in Salisbury. And it was most of the teachers, a lot of the teachers lived in the neighborhood. We were a community. I say community and not neighborhood. Self-sufficient, we had our own stores. It was just a beautiful neighborhood. We were colonized. There were certain areas where there were blacks. We had our black stores, we were self-contained in our neighborhood. Every mother on my block was my mother. If I go down the wrong road as a child, my mother knew it. I may have gotten a spanking from another mother, gotten that spanking from mom, but that's how our neighborhood was. We were built to be a neighborhood.
Clyde has always been a seeker, not just of names, but of motion, how his people moved, why they moved, and what they built along the way. What he was searching for wasn't missing history, it was clarity, a guide to help separate legend from documentation, while still honoring the spiritual and cultural truth held inside family memory.
Well, I'm a product of Clyde Thomas White Sr. and Florence Wesley Jones White. My mother and father had a 5th grade education, but he had the mindset, if you give him nail, hammer, lumber, he could build anything. He built his own chicken coop. That you walked in covered. But my father's mind was like that. He could look at an object and recreate it. And I got a lot of that myself. My dad taught me how to use the tools. And that's one thing my father, 5th grade education, very proud to be his son. Mom, Florence Wesley. Her sister, another good old country name, Ethel. Ethel Jane. Mom, my mother was a seamstress. I think she made about, I'll say, 85% of her clothing. She worked at a sewing factory, but her main thing was she was a beautician. My mother was a beautician for maybe over 60 years. Mom loved being a beautician. I approached my mother one year and said, Mom, let's go into business. Let's have a beauty supply store. No, I don't want to do that. I just want to do hair. And she did it well. She did it well.
Clyde made a deliberate choice to follow that wandering path of ancestry. What was meant to be 2 focused hours together quickly became 4, because once the records began to speak, neither of us wanted to stop listening. On screen, family trees unfolded, documents surfaced, trails stretched across generations, and something shifted. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was revelation.
I even asked my sister, who is 8 years older, how did Mom, that side of the family, get their last name? And she said, the slave master. Now, my father's side, their last name is White. So I don't know if they just went with a slave master or whatever. I'm not sure. It's something I'm still trying to find out. Harriet Tubman, I'm going to just throw that in there because she lived in an area about 30 miles from our hometown. And it's called Cambridge, Maryland, right outside of Cambridge. And I have a strong feeling there's a lineage between my mother and Harriet Tubman.
I watched recognition take hold. The moment Clyde realized his history wasn't distant or abstract, it was living, personal, and waiting to be claimed. He spoke of brilliance that seemed to echo through his bloodline: James Baldwin, Charles Dutton, and with laughter, hope, and determination, we wondered if Frederick Douglass himself might yet be found among his people.
I'm still tracking, to be sure. And I keep forgetting this name. Can I go to the audience and say, what's the name? James Baldwin. Okay. I found out that James Baldwin related to my mom, or they're related. And my mother was a Jones, but she married a Jones. And James Baldwin's mother, Emma Jones, James Baldwin was born a Jones, but he took on his stepfather's name, who was a Baldwin. My mother's first husband, Thomas Jones, directly related to James Baldwin. But also, my mother was related to him also. My sister mentioned a story when she was young. She was in Chester, Pennsylvania. We had great uncle and aunt up there. And James Baldwin was there, and my great aunt Louise, my sister's name is Louise, mentioned to my sister, this is your cousin. So James Baldwin. And in doing the ancestry, it's amazing, Quincy Jones popped up. And about a month after he popped up, I went to get my hair cut. And my barber said, man, you look just like Quincy Jones after he finished. And he said it again about a month ago. A gentleman's name, Charles Dutton, also came up. And there's a lot of Duttons in my hometown or in the surrounding areas. So I went to school with about 5 or 6 dozens, my age. So it's a common name, really. But I have a common name. Last name White, last name Jones, from where my mother and father are from. That's the prominent name. We are Joneses, Whites, Wake Falls.
Through the work, Clyde stopped seeing scattered names and began seeing a continuum: makers, thinkers, freedom seekers. What began as exploration became affirmation. His story was no longer something he simply admired. It was something he could own, document, and pass forward.
I'm 74, I'll be 75 next month. Only thing I have to hold on to is the memories. Because unfortunately, a lot of the people, they've made the transition. It's only about 2, 3 left from my neighborhood that I know of. I'm the only one in Georgia. My kids are in Maryland. Oldest child is in Colorado. But we talk to each other basically every day by email. Good morning, family. And we go from there. So for my kids, grandkids to know, cousins, it doesn't matter. It's family. And I want this generation to know about. And that's the best thing a family can do. So they can pass it on. Seriously. And I say it like that because I'm going to go out on a limb to say this. I've seen other nationalities get around a dinner table, and you see it on television. They're talking about Papa, Grandma, great-grandma. And some of us do not take that time to pass that information around. I want it to continue. I do. They need to know. There's one thing I really want to do, and hopefully I can do it next year, is get my kids together and ride back to Dames Quarter, Maryland. Because I want them to see, I think my grandfather's house on my mother's side is still standing, but I want them to see the area. This is educational. See where you come from and appreciate what your grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandmother, grandmother, they've put in you. You are a part of this, and that's very important. To where you, as we say, know where you come from, and that's very important.
There was a woman who rarely missed a Hillside Sankofa ancestry workshop, Helen Johnson, now Helen White. She always arrived with her husband Clyde by her side, together in the room, yet each walking a very different ancestral path. Helen came with questions, not just names, not just dates. She wanted the truth. Were her ancestors free Negroes? Were they enslaved? What did life look like for them, especially in the cold winters of Maryland and beyond? She was determined to understand how her people lived and how they endured. My role was to guide her through the landscape of ancestry research, to help her navigate records, contradictions, and silence without losing sight of the humanity behind the history.
I started maybe about 10, 12, 15 years ago looking, but before then, I didn't know much. Just because it's a mystery. It's like, first of all, I knew all my aunts and uncles, my grandmother, my great uncles. I knew them, and I knew her, of course. But we didn't have any pictures that I know of him. So just the curiosity to know more about this man. Who is he? Where did he come from? And it's still a mystery. My grandmother, Helen Anderson, she's mulatto. Her father was mulatto. It's listed that way, on some census, and then it'll change to black, but they were mulattoes. And so he owned a lot of land. Like I said, they were originally in Sussex, Delaware, but he moved to Maryland. And he was a preacher. So I had preachers on both sides of my family, on my mother's side as well as my father's.
One Sunday morning, before the workshop even began, Helen walked in holding a single white sheet of paper. She was waving it, her face lit with excitement. She had found emancipation papers. As she placed the document in my hands, she needed to know, was it real? Was it factual? Because this document did more than record freedom. It promised freedom for Sarah's children, a freedom Sarah herself had already secured. In that moment, that paper became more than a record. It became a restored voice, and Helen stood right inside that moment of history.
One thing that doing Ancestry, I found out about Sarah. And Sarah was just piqued my interest as I kept going. She's like a fifth great grandmother. So she was born around 1750, and she got her freedom in 1791. And her master freed her, and she had like 5 children. That's called emancipation. And they would get their freedom as they reached certain ages.
Where were they freed?
Virginia. And that's where my family is from. And it shows that she was born in Prince Edward County. And that is well known for being where the Civil War ended in that area. I think it's a city called Appomattox or something like that, which they had a lot of Indian names and stuff. But that was well known. And she was born around that time, and I have a census, and it shows she was 16, Black, Virginia was the state, and she was a slave, but she became free in 1791. And it was showing on the emancipation, the children, and it actually lists the children. It says Sarah and her 5 children to be freed on January 1st, 1791, and her children to be freed when they reached the age of 25.
What are their names?
Their names are Rachel, which she was 14 at the time, and Comfort, George. Comfort was 12, George was 9, Molly was 4. So they had to wait till they were 25 before they became free. And then the last one was Jenny. Jenny was 2. So, and it actually shows the date that Jenny would be free. She was born August 1790. She would be freed August 1813. So they, like you said, they had to work for 25 years or whatever that when they reached that age. And the deed also said, this is what the master is saying, I do hereby warrant and defend the freedom of all sick Negroes against myself, my heirs, executors, and administrators, under the penalty sum of 100 pound current money of Virginia to receive by each of these said Negroes, in case of any attempt to deprive them of their liberty, as by me above granted. When I saw this, it just gave me chills. And this is the written emancipation. It's on Ancestry. And the effect, knowing the children had to wait so long before they became free. You know, they didn't just become free with their mother. And I thought that was hard to swallow. You know, slavery is hard to swallow, period, but to see that the children has to go through that and continue to go through that, but their mother is free. And you wonder, is she living in the house, the big house? Where is she? You know, what's going on? So anyway, but just seeing this, though, brought a lot of light to it. Like I said, this is like my 5th great-grandmother. It seems like there's so much on Sarah in different, writings that I found in Ancestry. So it's just, you're she became a Giddens. She was Sarah Giddens. And the Giddens name still goes on. And the women are sort of small in stature. So I feel that she's a petite woman, but very strong. You think of Harriet Tubman or someone like that. My grandmother which she is a descendant of Gibbs. This is her great-grandmother. She was called Tiny because she was a short lady. And her sister was Irene. And Irene would sit in a chair and her feet would just stick off like this because they were so cute. They were tiny and cute, but powerful and strong.
As we worked through the fragments together, Helen felt both the joy and the pain of her ancestors. With every record, a story emerged, the strength of Black women threading through her lineage, the love, the protection, the fierce determination to secure a future for their children. Women who knew how to start over, who knew how to build something out of nothing, anywhere they landed. What began as a search for names, Johnson, Fuchs, Giddens, Paramore, Harmon, became a recovered narrative of resilience. And as Helen smiled, I knew she understood. This discovery, and all the others still unfolding, are the heart of Good Genes Genealogy. Because this work doesn't just uncover records, it transforms what was erased into memory, meaning, and legacy.
What I get from her is adventurous and not settling for. She was married, but she wasn't, obviously, I feel, happy. Now, these are things they never talk about when she come down for the holidays and stay with us. But she chose to go to New York over living in a country area of Maryland. She spent most of her time in Brooklyn and worked there. So, and my father was born in Philadelphia. So they migrated from Maryland to Philadelphia and then on to New York, her and her sister, and they were very close. I think they were only about 4 or 5 years apart. But I think that she stood strong as a single woman and went on her own to live in a big city and thrive. I see that in me because I've migrated here from Maryland. I had no family when I came here. And at the time, my husband and my 3 small children, we came here and made a life. So that I do. Identify with her because I'm proud to know that I carry her name. You know, she wasn't, as I know of, a very spiritual woman. She'd grown up, as a preacher's daughter. You know how that goes, preachers, PK. They sometimes rebel. I don't know that any of the children were overly spiritual, but they lived good lives, and they were good people. So I see that she just wanted to be who she wanted to be. Well, just seeing, like it says, Sarah with 5 children. And obviously, it's reading and studying the ancestry. I didn't see anything where anyone was killed or died early or anything like that. So like you said, the resilience and the strength to go through slavery, this was an enslaved person. And she was 50-something when she became a free person, or close to that age. So she had to be strong. And up in Maryland, it was country. Virginia was on the water, and so there was lots of fields and land. So picking whatever she did, the tomatoes or all the vegetables that pretty much people eat, cucumbers, whatever, she had to be strong to go through that. And whether she was in the house, cleaning, being a servant, that's not easy either when you're not appreciated for who you really are.
For Helen, this journey became a responsibility. What she discovered was meant to be taught and passed on. She carries these stories forward, so her children and grandchildren know their strength, their resilience, and the truth of where they come from. This is her legacy.
Well, what I take from it is that I have a strong legacy, and a legacy to pass on to my children. And I have a strong feeling for Black girls and Black women, being a Black woman. And I was single myself for 20-some years. So I raised my children together with my ex-husband. And so I saw the strength that I can stand on. I have no reason to feel like I can't do more or keep learning more or keep striving for more. And that it's very important for people to pursue and get as much knowledge, whether they go to college or just explore and travel to the Georgia mountains, learn something. I believe in trying to learn something every day. Keep educating yourself, because right now my husband and I are studying Blacks in the Bible. So I think all of this is important to know who we are, where we come from, and share it with our children so they will know and not just take this for granted.
When we first met Sam Wilson on Roots Revealed, he was searching for answers about his father. His father, also named Sam, and the men before him who shared that same name, appeared and disappeared across records. Their lives resisted easy documentation, leaving behind a trail of repetition, overlap, and unanswered questions. What should have been a lineage felt like a maze, one shaped by missing paper trails and deliberate obscurity. Since his first appearance, Sam has learned that the difficulty was not accidental. On his father's side, names repeat across generations. Fathers and sons blur together. Timelines overlap. Together, we stopped searching only for individuals and began examining patterns, naming traditions, migration routes, and community networks. By carefully separating lives that history had collapsed into one, we began rebuilding structure where there had once only been confusion.
I didn't know my dad's family at all, except he had an older son that came to live with us when we moved, when I was 12 years old. And I got to know him then because we had to share the same room. Yeah. And he went to Payne College. But Dad loved to take a little nip every now and then on the weekend when he wasn't working. Well, it may have been more than a nip. And he was very sociable with the ladies in the neighborhood. He had a lot of girlfriends in the neighborhood. He was married to my mom. Yeah. I realized that when I was 5 or 6 years old. She would leave and go to work. And then about 12 o'clock, somebody knock on the door and they come through the house. You could smell a heavy perfume. They were always coming, always coming. The wives that were in the neighborhood, they were very sociable with him because he had a little sandwich shop attached to the house. And people would come through and get their sandwiches, pig ears, pig feet, and pickled eggs. Most of the time he was working during the week. And that was his side hustle. You know, he said everybody got to have a side hustle. He worked out at, you know, the old elevators.
He was the elevator operator
in the department store? No, this is at Forest Hill Military Hospital, Forest Hill.
Did they admit Black people?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as you was a veteran, yeah.
While his father's side demanded reconstruction, Sam's mother's side offered memory. Sam and his sister Rosemary were born in Richmond County, Georgia, to Mattie Mae Johnson. Much of what Sam knows comes through Rosemary, through stories of places, people, and moments never captured on paper. These memories fill in what the records cannot, even as they leave gaps that require patience, context, and care. Together, memory and documentation begin to meet.
As far as Mom, all I know is she was a nurse, and everybody in the neighborhood would come to her if they had a cough or fever or something, and she would boil a pot on the stove, said, just have a seat, honey. And next thing you know, give them a shot. Then they'd go home and be happy. She was the RN, registered nurse, at that same hospital. I believe that's where they met. And she worked that shift from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. The information that I grew up with was not factual all the way. Just a little bit of information just to keep us in check. I found out that she had gone to H.R. Johnson High School, and from there went on to be a nurse, nursing school. I didn't know that until here, I guess about 20 years ago, and I said, I didn't know that. Uncle Bill came and lived with us for a few years. That was her brother. She said it was her brother, older brother. And Grandma and Grandpa that I knew as Grandma and Grandpa, they would come up every weekend and park in the driveway, and people would come from the neighborhood and buy their vegetables and eggs and meat, all that stuff. All that stuff. And I understand there was some type of friction between Grandma and my daddy because she didn't know he was bringing meat up and he was selling it through the shop and then share with her and Grandpa. So I heard that later on.
What Sam has come to understand is this: his family's complexity is not a failure of memory, it is evidence of survival. Like so many African diasporan families, his history was shaped by migration without records, informal structures, and systems that did not preserve Black lives with care. Through this work, frustration gave way to understanding, absence became context, and confusion became clarity. Sam's journey reminds us that restoration takes time and that even fragmented histories can become living legacies.
Well, see, Grandma told me that my mama, was given to her when they were on the plantation in South Carolina, I think. And my mama's mama at that time said she had too much living to do and she had time to take care of no baby. And my grandmama that I know now would say, well, I'll take her, give her to me, I'll take her, you go ahead on, I'll take her. And that's how I know, that's all I know right there. Tess Johnson and Maddie Johnson, we thought they were our grandparents. My mother's real mother, I'll put it like that.
So
Maddie's mother gave her away to Maddie Johnson. Yeah, I found out later, and I was floored. I didn't know her mother was down the street, around the corner on Denton Street in Augusta. I did not know. Didn't have a clue. And I walked there a lot of times on my way to school, walked past it. Did not know. And they're right there in the neighborhood. And I think Uncle Donald may have been one of my mother's brothers because we call him Uncle Donald. He had a pulpwood business down on that side of town. And Rosemary and I would always go down there.
What Sam has come to understand is this: his family's complexity is not a failure of memory, it is evidence of survival. Like so many African diasporan families, his history was shaped by migration without records, informal structures, and systems that did not preserve Black lives with care. Through this work, frustration gave way to understanding, absence became context, and confusion became clarity. Sam's journey reminds us that restoration takes time and that even fragmented histories can become living legacies.
Well, I think it's important to know where your family comes from. Now, the reason I think I don't know is because they kept me busy. They kept me away from the young ladies in the city. I just remember on the corner, there was an Asian grocery store. And there was a pretty little Asian girl. And once I started going up there a lot, talking to her, that's when I realized my mama realized that it was time for me to go somewhere else because she wasn't gonna have me do that. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. You don't need to know her. Leave her alone. You go into Columbia County. Yeah, and every summer they would send me out to Columbia County in Evans to stay with them. And I learned about the chickens and the hogs and the cow and riding the mule and all that stuff. And you don't run the mule, you just walk the mule. Because when you run the mule will throw you off the back. I was about 6 or 7 years old. I must have fallen off that mule. Anyway, and then got beat because the mule would come back to the barn and I was walking trying to catch it. They knew I was running the mule. When I got up to where I could start smelling the female, they sent me down to Columbia County, or they would send me with the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts, and the Girl Scouts. You have to be there 2 weeks at a time. And so I was gone all summer working, making sure nobody drowned, because I knew how to swim, so they wanted me to go and be a lifeguard with all of these different camps. I knew that. But I don't know the rest of what was going on back in town. Rosemary does, I bet. But Rosemary is kind of, how you say, she was spiritual. At an early age, she could see things and see people and see auras and all that stuff. And they thought she was different, real different. But it was just normal for her. And sometimes when she's talking, you have to listen because she's telling you the spiritual side instead of what you think you see. She said, no, that's not it. I mean, it just comes out. And she's always been like that. So something in our history has been embedded in her psyche. And so now I'm becoming more curious. Well, I wonder, how come she got all this? Because sometimes it bothers her. But I said, just calm down, it's okay.
Through this work, Sam's story began to shift. What once felt like frustration became understanding. What once felt scattered became context. His family's complexity was not a failure of memory. It was evidence of survival in a world that did not preserve Black lives with care. Sam's journey is the reality for many African diasporan families. Difficult trees, fractured records, and histories that must be patiently restored. And in that restoration, mystery becomes meaning, and the past becomes a living legacy.
I feel more at peace when I'm working for myself, because I tried that working for somebody else, and they do not respect you as an individual. They do not. And that would be my jumping off part to get them straight. You don't know me. You need to respect me. I've gotten into 1 or 2 fights on the job, but nobody said anything because the person that was fighting with me, they knew they were in the wrong. And they didn't want nobody else to know they got beat by me, little old skinny me. Well, one thing I know we need to do, we need to stop being afraid of trying something new. We've got to go for it. And don't panic because it's not working out the first year or the 10th year. It's in you to finish it, Because what's that thing between the time you were born and the time you were demised, that little line they talk about? Do all you can while you can. And leave the rest of it alone, but just do what you can. That's what I think. You can take that to the bank. They ain't gonna let you cash the check, but you can take it to the bank.
In a previous episode of Roots Revealed, we introduced you to the charismatic, spunky family historian Cheryl Sellers. Cheryl brought joy, curiosity, and heart to her genealogical journey. She approached her family history with warmth and determination, reminding us that ancestry work is not just about records. It is about love, identity, and connection. Since that presentation, we are saddened to share that Cheryl has passed. Though she is no longer with us, her legacy endures. It lives on in the stories she uncovered, the questions she dared to ask, and the history she reclaimed for future generations. May Cheryl Sellers' memory continue to guide, inspire, and remind us why this work matters.